I now invite the President of the General Assembly, Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock, to address the committee. You have the floor, President.
Thank you, Chair, dear His Excellency, Mr. Maurizio Massari. First of all, congratulations, and also congratulations to the Bureau members on the elections to lead the first committee during the 80th session. Good morning to you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, especially to those PRs not being based in New York, with whom I had the chance already to engage intensively, but being here from Geneva, and also very warm welcome to the experts and directors from capitals. I wish all of us success in the work ahead after we have finished, I would say, quite successfully, given the situation of our world, the high-level week. Now the real work, the committee season starts. And you assume this responsibility at a moment of urgency, as we all know, as conflicts devastate communities in Haiti, Sudan, Ukraine, Gaza, and so many more forgotten crises. While our commitment to disarmament and the cause of peace is visibly weakening. Due to that, or besides that, people are challenging our institution, which was built for peace. So therefore, the work of this committee becomes more important, but also more challenging. I underlined in my opening remarks of the high-level week that we have to make clear in all these debates that while the Charter is being violated from different actors and parts of the world, this is not the UN as such which is failing. But what is failing is the commitment by some to uphold the principles of the Charter and international law. We could also see it a bit, to be frank and open, in the discussions over this week, that disarmament has been used many, many times in the opening speeches, but when we had the special thematic meetings on disarmament, you could see that there were also a certain amount of member states in the room. You might even think that some has forgotten about the tragedy of Nagasaki and Hiroshima as we are remembering this human catastrophe 80 years later, and when we rang the peace bell here just a couple of weeks ago. It made clear so much to all of us being there, and remembering me from my visit to Japan, I think it was 2 years ago, that for societies which had to face these situation of mass destruction, this will be never forgotten, but it's inherited by generation, and this is why we always have to remember that the young generations are the best advocates for peace because they inherited the drama from the past. Yet we are in the world of today, and while we speak of peace, some actions and how we allocate resources tell another story. Last year, the world spent $3,169 every second on nuclear weapons. So now, $3,000 every second. Resources that were by that not used for building schools, expanding healthcare, and strengthening infrastructure, but instead invested in weapons capable of annihilating humanity as such. While we mark the first anniversary of the Pact for the Future, in which member states pledged to strengthen the disarmament and non-proliferation architecture, we are also seeing that that very architecture, painstakingly built over decades, is now being challenged. From some openly, from others more from the back. Therefore, at this start of our working session, and as the working groups devolve into the nitty-gritty substance, I think it's very important taking a realistic view of the world as it is. We must consider how we can and should work together for the future so that the hard-won successes of the past are not eroded. We discussed it many times, dear Under Secretary General, dear Isumi, in many, many conferences before, and it has been discussed here as well, and the chair mentioned it as well. But we are facing currently that the successes, the most big successes, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the Ottawa Convention, the Chemical and Biological Weapons Convention, and the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty are being challenged, and our work is to be how we can prevent that it's totally eroding. So our commitments during High-Level Week on disarmament must not fade into rhetoric. They must live in practice here in the work of the committees, but also obviously in capitals around the world. Too many states have set aside their obligations instead of reinforcing them. Some have chosen a different path altogether. So it's our collective duty to preserve, strengthen, and update these commitments to meet new realities, especially as emergent technologies from artificial intelligence to cyber capabilities reshape our security landscape. And because I'm always believing that in international law you have to have an optimistic view, even if the glass is not even half full but empty, we should also consider that these kind of new topics also raise a new attention for people, for younger generations. So the outer space disarmament topics, for example, is something which could also engage totally new actors from all around the world. That will be a defining moment to recommit not only to the disarmament and non-proliferation, but to the very raison d'etre of the Charter, a new commitment to peace. As we have seen also over the High-Level Week, but as you know also from the last years, obviously this will not be easy at all. And therefore, I would like to turn to a second point, also my capacity here now speaking not as a disarmament expert, but the PGA, that obviously the work of the working groups of the committee sessions is highly connected to the UN 80 reform, so the reform agenda of the United Nations as such. I said therefore in my opening speech at the High-Level Week that this is not an ordinary session. Not for capitals, not for the General Assembly, and therefore also not for the committee work. And again, as there are also some PRs from Geneva and directors and experts from the capital here in the room, we are taking this task of UN 80 reform very, very serious, because we know that it's more than a reform. It's the definition of the United Nations for the next decades, for the next future. So while we are standing at a crossroads, everything we are doing here, every failure, but also every success in the committee is also being seen of how strong the United Nations is as such. And therefore, coming again to the nitty-gritty part of committee work, every resolution, every working method matters, because we have to make this institution fit for the future, fit for purpose, and therefore it has to be more agile. So I would like to encourage you, when you debate the very important context of every resolution on disarmament, on outer space, to always ask yourself, is it still making sense 80 years, 50 years later? Is it really the reality we are living in? And if we still need it, and in your topics most of the time it's the DNA of this institution, peace and security, can we copy and paste the text from the past, or do we have to update it to new technologies, to new challenges we are facing today? So therefore, our work in these times is not only looking at the thematic contents, but also if we can actually deliver in practice. Again, one of the challenges today that everybody's saying, well, the text is great, but if you cannot implement it, is it really worthwhile? So therefore, the UN 80 initiatives and the broader reform process is also about reducing text. Not as a cost-cutting exercise for cost-cutting, but to make our work less bureaucratic and more efficient. So the mandate review is central to that effort. And as you know, the mandate review is highly engaged in the General Assembly, in the informal working group, but it's also being delivered across the main committees, the Assembly as such. And there are positive signs that we can really make progress in this regard. And I'm very thankful to your committee. This is maybe why you're called also the first committee, because you're being the first one on delivering on this very critical mandate review. So I've learned yesterday or the day before when I met with the chair, with Your Excellency, that in the 79th session there were 76 resolutions, and in the 80th session, so far at least, there are over 60 resolutions. So again, it's not only about cutting for cutting, but to really focus on the main important ones. This demonstrates that this reduction is more than statistics. It's about demonstrating that duplication can be reduced when member states are willing to do so. Still, the task is far from finished, so real progress will come when all committees streamline their agendas, ensuring that every resolution adds an extra value and not creates extra noise. So again, I would like to encourage you to ask yourself in drafting the resolution, is every paragraph essential? Do we really need an SG report when funding and capacity may be limited or not even existing? But on the other hand as well, underline when we really need a report that the whole committee, that the whole membership is also standing behind it to implement the text as such. I emphasized also to many of your ministers and heads of government over the last week of the high-level week that the reform is ultimately about priorities. It's about the question, who do we want to be as a United Nations in this time, in this century? And I would like to invite you, as I did with the heads of government, we want to be better together, and we here from the PGA office, from the General Assembly, from the member states, we embrace this challenge, and I wish you and I wish all of us all the best. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the President of the General Assembly for her statement.